Hey, welcome to Two Seals and a Walrus. I am your co-host, Sean Webb. As always, I am joined by my co-host, two Navy SEALs. On my right, United States Navy SEAL Sniper Medic Ben Johnson, and to his right on the couch, Doug Moulton, United States Navy Sniper. SEAL Sniper. So this is the only podcast on the internet that has two United States Navy SEALs as co-hosts, and we have a lot of fun. We talk about how to live a happier life by simply changing your mindset, and today's guest is right in that vein because he's an old friend of mine who I kind of look up to. I haven't ever had this conversation with him, but I admire him because of his tenacity of dropping what is comfortable and going for what he wants to achieve. And that man is right before you. His name is Rick Cohen. He's a filmmaker currently living in Hollywood, LA, and he's a writer, producer, director, editor of multiple films. You've got 7 in the can, I believe. You've done some pretty notable documentaries. But you're a person who has always just kind of thrown chance to the wind and said, "Hey, I'm going to go chase my dream." Because the background that I'll give people real quick before we jump into the conversation. I met Rick when we were both living in Atlanta. And we met at a mutual friend of ours who had a poker game. And Rick had been out to California to try to be a filmmaker. And for whatever reasons, he had come back to Atlanta and then done a couple of projects there connected with the geographical region there. And then sold all his shit, packed up a U-Haul with what's left, and went out to California to be a filmmaker again. And has also been chasing a dream of amateur baseball, and he's now in the Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame. Congratulations, sir.
That's awesome. That's cool.
So welcome to Two Seals and a Walrus, Rick.
Yeah, I'm honored to be amongst the military. So, yeah, I got a lot of respect.
That makes one of us.
First off, I'm in Studio City to get it correct because we're not quite Hollywood. I think we're the more suburban take on Hollywood, Studio City. I'm right near CBS Radford, where they shoot a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And not too far from Warner Brothers and Universal, and not too far from Disney either. Disney's right up the road.
Now, the last time that you and I saw each other, we were in Atlanta at a poker game at Stan's house, having a good old time trying to win a bunch of money. Back when I was playing poker for a living for a few years, and you were getting ready to go to California again. In fact, Stan loved to call you L.A. Ricky because you had come from L.A. and you had just finished a film. Now, you did a documentary in Georgia that got a little bit of critical acclaim. What was that about?
Well, it's funny you brought up the L.A. Ricky part. That actually started at the Tavern at Phipps from the bartender Ramon. He gave me that moniker, and it stuck with me from day one that I was in Atlanta. And I was in Atlanta for almost 15 years. And, people who knew me just knew me as L.A. Ricky. And it was funny because, even after year 14, I was still L.A. Ricky.
So you're saying people in Georgia don't ever learn anything new.
But the film was Faded Glory, which was my first real full feature film. I made in 2009. It came out I made it in 07, 08, and it came out in 09. Did real well on the festival circuit. It was an idea that I had about my amateur baseball team. And I had actually gotten married again, and my wife was work at Showcase, which was a big camera shop in Atlanta that doesn't exist anymore. I think they just closed down last year.
Oh my God! Yeah, I bought a ton of stuff from them.
I know, and they're not there anymore. And but those guys were great, and I got discounted cameras and equipment and sound equipment.
I loved Showcase.
Yeah, I mean, I probably got like 40-50% off, and I dove in, and made a movie, and it did really well. I got full distribution, both international and domestic. Won a couple of awards, and then from there, I actually did a bigger film, which was Season of a Lifetime.
Right.
It was the one about the high school football coach with Lou Gehrig's disease. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you guys know, you're going to get the inside scoop on this. We just signed a deal with Nice Studios, and they're the guys behind the TV series Genius. I don't know
Okay.
if you've ever seen it on Nat Geo.
Yep.
But they did season 1 with Jeffrey Rush Einstein, season 2 Antonio Banderas, and season 3 is going to be Aretha Franklin. And they are signed on to do a feature version of Season of a Lifetime.
Oh, wow.
I actually got commissioned to write the script. I wrote the script. And it's a little different from the doc because we cover the coach's entire life. And
Right.
it's more of a love story than it is about one season of football, which was what my doc was about.
Right.
So I'm really excited, and it's going to bring me back to Georgia to shoot, because we're going to obviously shoot in Georgia. We're going to take the tax credits, and we're going to cast it with the local actors and local crew.
You beat me to all my questions.
Looks like Ben's got an upcoming security job and probably cameo walk-ons and
Set medic and I mean, what else?
So I'm excited about that. I've made a couple other smaller films, but the biggest thing I have going on right now is Superbird. And in 2 weeks, you're going to see Ford versus Ferrari. It's going to come out in theaters all over.
right.
I just went to a sneak screening at the DGA here in LA.
Nice.
And we have the sort of 4-year sequel version of Ford versus Ferrari called Superbird. Ford versus Ferrari, just to give people background, is the story of Shelby, who built the Ford.
Right.
And he decided he was going to take on Ferrari in the 24-hour Le Mans. And he got this driver, Ken Miles, to help him design a car that was going to compete with Ferrari. Not only did they compete with them, they beat them. And our story takes place 4 years later when Chrysler was trying to compete with Ford in NASCAR.
Right.
And they were going to cancel their program. And then the GM of Chrysler Racing, this guy, Bob McCurry, had this genius idea of firing all his mechanical engineers and hiring aerospace engineers from the space program down in Houston and recruit them and bring them up to Detroit to build what we now know as the Plymouth Roadrunner Superbird. If you've never seen that car, go on the internet. It's really cool, and it's selling for a lot of money nowadays at car auctions.
Yeah, it looks like a rocket.
Yeah. Well, it's got wings. So, yes, it does. It's got wings and a nose cone and scoops over the fenders that they claimed were for tire clearances, but really were for dirty air releasing as clean air over the tires. And
wow.
Nice.
it helped them win the race, and it helped them
downforce.
Right. It helped them be an undraftable car, like really one of the first undraftable cars out there. So anyway, that's what I got going on.
That sounds like an amazing story.
Sounds like fun to shoot.
Is that like, do you have, production partners and what signed up on this already, or is this still in development, or what's going on?
No, well, I do in a way. First off, my partner in this is a guy named Dan Forer, and Dan has directed 4 documentaries for ESPN, the 20 for 20 series. If you've ever seen the 20 for 20 series, Dan did he did Mike and the Mad Dog, which was last year, I believe, the radio guys. And then he did Spirits of St. Louis, or I think it's called High Spirits. It was about the ABA St. Louis basketball team that made the deal of the century when the NBA and ABA combined. So Dan actually approached me because ESPN didn't want to do this as a 30 for 30. And he said, what do you think about this as a feature? And he and I dove in head first. We did about 2 years worth of research and treatments, and we had to deal with NASCAR for a little while. And then when that fell through, we found a company called Slated, which is a interesting business model for a film company out here in LA. They really do coverage on scripts, and I don't know if you know anything about coverage, but coverage is very expensive, and all the Hollywood studios do it. They rate scripts from 1 to 5 in different categories, such as structure, dialogue, tone, and story, originality. And Slated, while they do that, they find the best, highest rated scripts, and they decide if they're going to want to produce them as well and raise money for them. It's really smart because, they're getting access to the creme de la creme.
Yeah, they're getting first crack.
Yeah, so they get first crack. So our script rated a 79. Now, just to give you an idea, anything over 80 is almost like a greenlit film tomorrow.
Okay.
So anything over 70 is a great script. Anything over 75 is a very, very good script. So we got a 79 and immediately attracted their attention. They wanted to help us produce this film. So we signed a contract with them and, they're going to help us raise money. We're going to do this independently and then get a studio to pick it up.
Wow. Now, is that something that you could do with like a social media funded site, like a Kickstarter or something?
Not a GoFundMe type of thing.
Okay.
Slated has a group of investors
It's going to be a big budget.
they're all pretty wealthy people that have been vetted out who want to invest money in certain ideas or certain genres. So in other words, you have your people who like horror films, right?
Okay.
Horror films really do well. You have your people who want to maybe invest in rom-coms or a love story.
Right.
And there are people who are racing fans.
Yeah.
And they love cars and car enthusiasts. So, we're targeting that demographic right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the Fast and the Furious films did all that well.
Well, but it's funny because
Which one of the 18 of them?
It's really an action movie. So it's interesting that you brought that up because we're waiting to see what the numbers are on Ford versus Ferrari.
Right.
And that's going to take a few weeks to really find out how well that film does. If you remember a film a couple of years back called Rush.
Oh, I love that film. It's amazing. One of the best racing films of all time, bar none. Rush, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. Definitely underrated.
So it's a Ron Howard movie. Very well done. It's got a big star in Hemsworth. And it didn't do well domestically.
Yeah.
It didn't do well as far as, numbers that would be considered, go pictures right now.
Right.
So, but again, that was Formula One.
It's Formula One. It's not
different
domestic.
story.
Yeah.
Now NASCAR, we are really hoping that Ford versus Ferrari does in the $100 million range in the first couple of weeks. We need them to do that because then if we do, people are going to be like, oh, well, who's got the next Ford versus Ferrari?
Yeah. I tell you this, Rick, I live literally a driver and maybe a wedge away from the farmhouse that they shot. That was that famous scene of building the car in Mooresville, North Carolina. I live in NASCAR USA. On the top of the water tower, it says Race City USA, right? So, I mean, the folks here are definitely going to eat it up, but I think you're probably throwing a dart right at the center of the target on targeting NASCAR because, obviously being one of the largest profitable sports in America, it also has one of the largest fan bases, I think, not too far underneath NFL football. Is that correct?
Well, it does, but I'll give you an interesting story. We went in to pitch this before I wrote the first script, and we had a meeting with Sony. We had NASCAR with us. We had all the NASCAR entertainment people with us, and another big producer who I won't name because he's not on the project anymore. But we pitched it to them, and the first things out of the executive's mouth at Sony was, well, NASCAR doesn't do well internationally. And NASCAR was sitting in the room, and they're like, well, that's not true. We have fans all over the world. And he's like, well, it kind of is true. So we're dealing with that perception, that persona. It's funny. I have another project called Maslin, and it's about the beginnings of professional football. And it takes place in 1905, 1906, and it's a whole series I wrote. It's literally a limited series. And anytime I pitch it, the first words out of an executive's mouth was, well, they tried to do Leatherheads and it didn't do well. Now, Leatherheads, A, was a comedy, B, was the NFL, C, was 1926, 25, 26. It was 25 years before my movie, before my series. So you get these executives get things in their heads and they can't get them out. They can't see outside the box.
Yeah.
So us having Ford versus Ferrari do really well is going to be a necessity for us to get this film set up.
Now, you got to meet and hang out with the director of Ford versus Ferrari. Is that true?
I did, James Mangold. It was sort of by accident. There was a Q&A after the film at the DGA.
Right.
They walked off through security out the side, and I was hanging out in the lobby talking to a bunch of people, and I went to the bathroom, and I saw Mangold walk out the side door with a lady. I don't know who she was. And I said something to him. And I'll tell you, rarely does this happen. So Mangold looks at me and he goes, well, I really appreciate that. What's your name? Now, nobody ever asks your name, right? They're like, oh, thanks a lot. And they just keep moving on. And Mangold was really nice. And he walked up to me and he shook my hand. He said, what's your name? And I started to talk to him about our project. And he's like, you guys are going to do well. That's a great project. And then I'm like, I hope you guys do well. If you do well, maybe we'll get a chance. So that was a great synergistic moment when I got to meet him right after the screening. And the film is good. The film is very good.
They got amazing cast on that thing. Like, they got some superstars in that cast, right?
We did. And the big difference between our two films, is first of all, they have one female in the whole movie, really. And it's Ken Miles' wife. And it's an actress I've never seen, but she's fabulous in the movie. And she has some great scenes with Christian Bale. But we have four. And our secondary characters are pretty much all female beyond the three engineers and the GM of Chrysler Racing. And of course, the racers themselves, like Buddy Baker and Richard Petty.
Right.
And Pete Hamilton, who actually won the 1970 Daytona 500. So our film is a little bit more character-driven in a sense that we have more subplots and more story away from racing.
Right.
And Ford versus Ferrari is more of a racing movie.
Right.
So, in fact, when we had people read our scripts, they were like, this is a great script. I wish there was a little more racing in it. And we used and we got a lot. Seriously, we got a lot of that in our. And I wouldn't say that it was a negative. It was just people want to see action.
Wow, that's so cool. Now, do you get to meet a lot of famous people in LA? I mean, are they just walking down the street? I've spent, very little time there.
Sean.
I mean, I don't know. No, here's the thing. No, I mean, you don't. I'm just joking a little bit, but at the same time, Rick's in the film business. So, and I have seen him in pictures with The Rock and Rob Corddry from you're on the set of Ballers, right? Hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine, and he calls me Zelig. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Woody Allen film Zelig. But Zelig is sort of like Forrest Gump character where, he winds up being in a situation where he's around very famous people. It's happened to me over and over and over my whole lifetime. And I don't know, I guess you have to sort of create your own universe in order to be in that situation. I had a sit-down dinner with Quincy Jones for 2.5 hours. Literally me, a girlfriend that I was dating at the time, Quincy and his caretaker sitting at a table for 2.5 hours talking.
Jesus, that's awesome.
That's amazing.
He's the godfather of music. Like, you don't get to sit down with Quincy. And by the way, like, completely uninterrupted, nobody around us, nobody bothering us. And, by the end of the night, I was hugging him, putting my arm around him. I mean, it was really a wonderful experience. And what an amazing man.
Was he like drugged out and stuff? Are you doing like Weekend at Bernie's stuff or what?
No, he's actually pretty alert for an 85-year-old man. And
he was amazing. I mean, he was behind Michael Jackson's videos and music and producer, and he was We Are the World. He was the person who told everybody to check their ego at the door, and everybody did because he was the person who asked. I mean, that's amazing. How'd you get like 2.5 hours of dinner with him?
Was a friend of mine's daughter, who's this prodigy. She was mentored by Quincy.
Okay.
And she was playing a small venue up here in the Valley. I forget the name of the place. It's a jazz club up here in the Valley. And Quincy was there because he wanted to see her. And I was there because the girl's mother and I went to high school together. So she invited me. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting at a table with Quincy and, having a one-on-one with him all night. It's even with The Rock, I got invited to go to the set of Ballers. And then there was this weird moment where I was standing on set and nobody was around the Rock and Rob. And I basically just walked up to the two of them, started to have a conversation, got the camera out, and The Rock and I were going to take a picture. And then Rob stuck his head in and said, I want to be in the picture. I'm sitting on the set, like rapping with these guys. That's happened a lot to me, especially out here in Los Angeles. I mean, there isn't a week that goes by. I'll give you the best, for instance.
Sure.
I'm in a coffee shop, and my favorite show on TV, bar none, is Survivor. Like, I am a huge Survivor fan. I actually go to a Wednesday night Survivor group to watch Survivor, right? I love it. It's like the greatest combination of horrible human behavior that you can actually put together in one room. So Jeff Probst walks into the coffee shop.
Holy shit.
And there I am. I'm standing online, and there's Jeff Probst behind me, and I turn around. I'm like, Jeff, I'm the biggest Survivor fan. And the next thing I know, I'm in a 15-minute conversation with Jeff Probst, taking pictures with him, talking about the show. I didn't realize how small he was, though. That's the thing. God bless TV. It's like he maybe was 5'8", 160 pounds.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm 6 foot 205, and I'm like towering over him. And on TV, he looks like this, strong, massive, manly human being. But who knows? Maybe one day I get on the show. You never know.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Well, you could take notes from my
you.
friend Ben Johnson at every opportunity that we have to remind him that he was on Naked and Afraid. We love to do so. And so Ben Johnson was on Naked and Afraid and had to live on a very cush island in the Bahamas.
No, I got to live on a cush island. I had to beat up a woman.
Now I'm going to YouTube the episodes.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if CBS is like, that's a CBS show. No, that was a Discovery. What is that?
Discovery Channel.
Okay, Discovery doesn't release their stuff on YouTube, right? You can't find it on YouTube, can you?
I can't find it like anywhere.
Yeah. Well, they, the editors on that show took a lot of license and cut a lot of. They created a narrative that kind of made Ben a dick. It was like he showed the girl how to start a fire with some magnifying glass and some shards of bark and shit like that, and then they cut out the part of him showing her, and then basically showed her doing it like she was showing up the Navy SEAL on the survival stuff.
Then they showed me laying around all day every day because I didn't want to go stand in the sun and get burnt.
Meanwhile, Ben is basically free diving, collecting rock lobster and feeding the whole fucking crew seafood on the island because it's better than their catering. He has like all the survival stuff figured out. He's figured out a shallow pond area that was keeping all of his livestock alive.
They edited all that out.
Yeah, and they cut it all out. They didn't allow him to have any glory at all.
So I've done a few survival things myself, as I'm sure Sean can tell you. I've done Death Race, which not many people have done.
Right.
Did 36 hours of that. I've done Joe Decker's Ultimate Suck, which I got lost in the woods and had to get a rescue team out to find us. And I was hallucinating so bad that I thought a giant tree stump was a black bear.
Yeah.
I was screaming at it from 40 feet. I'll never forget this. I was screaming at it from 40 feet for about 20 minutes, and it never moved. And then when I got closer, I realized it was a tree stump.
I like that because I totally get the hallucination thing. And from a survival perspective, I totally get screaming at it from 40 feet. I love that. I love that you decided that it was time to approach it.
When it wasn't moving for 30, 40 minutes, I figured.
Yeah, so go up to it. What's the worst that could happen?
Get closer so you can eat me easier.
Yeah, this glowing green sludge is either water or gonna kill me. I'll take a sip anyway.
One of my most daring and favorite things was I went to the island of Lanai in Hawaii, and I was a +1 on someone's President's Weekend for a big pharmaceutical company. And before I went, I said, I did some research, and I said, well, Lanai's 52 miles around. I wonder if anybody's solo navigating the island on foot in a day. And did some research, found out that nobody had done it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I told the person, you got to do it a day where I don't have to do anything with you, and I'm going to go on this trek. So I brought all my gear and did everything. Well, I started out at 3 a.m. in pitch black. And remember, there's no cell reception. There's only really one place of human contact, which is the Four Seasons Hotel, and everything else besides the airport. It's basically an empty wasteland with an inactive volcano. And I went off, and around mile 22, I realized I was running out of water. And I was almost at the halfway point of my journey. And I had maybe I had one bar left and no water left. And it's one of those things where, if you swam across the English Channel and said you were too tired, I'm going to swim back. That's the old joke.
Yeah.
There was nothing I could do. I was already halfway on the journey, and I had to go and turn and, make it back.
Wow.
But I did, and it was quite an experience. That was probably the most daring thing I've done.
Wow. So what made you quit what you were doing in Atlanta, pack up all your stuff, and head out to L.A. to continue your career? I mean, because a lot of people who are listening to this, who are trying to, we're trying to help them figure out how to quell their fears and whatnot, so they can make their life epic. What was the thing that finally just ticked you over that tipping point to say, screw it, I'm going to LA to be a filmmaker?
Well, it's not that I was a big fish in a small pond in Georgia, because that's not it at all. But if I ever wanted to get to the level that I wanted to get to, I needed to come out here and play with the big boys again. There's tons of production in Georgia, and people always say to me, well, why did you leave Georgia? There's so much movie making and everything. And I'm like, yeah, but the business is still in Los Angeles. The business side of things is still in LA.
Right.
And I knew that when my youngest child left the house, I was free to go. And that was my daughter. And she went to New York. And so there was no real ties keeping me there. Well, that's my ringtone.
Nice.
Good, the bad, and the ugly. So I decided to become a minimalist, and I sold everything.
Yeah.
Every piece of furniture I had. The only thing I kept was some sports memorabilia that was really close to me. And I put it in storage. And I drove out from Atlanta to LA with whatever I could fit in my car. And my car was packed. Like, you couldn't see out of any of the windows. It was almost as if I was like in a space capsule. And all I could do was straight forward and maybe to the side of me. And that was it. And I did this 10-day trip, and it was around my 50th birthday. And I did all these really cool adventurous stuff. And I went to the college football championship in Dallas. I did biking and hiking, and I went to the top of Angel's Landing with a buddy of mine from college, which was really dangerous. So I did a bunch of things, and then I got to LA and slept on a couch for slept on the floor, actually, pretty much for the first 4 months on a mattress until I figured out where I wanted to live. And I'm 50 years old, and here I am, I'm sleeping on a mattress. And I don't give a crap. I'm like, I'm out here to do one thing, and that's to get back in the game. And I don't need to spend money because I'm spending money on my kids. At that point, I was still, helping my kids out as they're going through college. So I became a minimalist. I owned my car, and that's really the only thing I owned in life was my car and my clothes and my computer and some camera equipment. That was it. So 4 years down the road, I'm here. I've had a lot of disappointments. I'm not going to kid you. It's a tough town. Yeah. I've had things that were this close to going. I've had things that were I don't want to say stolen from me or others, but just things that didn't work out, partnerships that didn't work out.
Right.
And I've done a lot of work. I've actually gotten my yoga certification to teach.
Oh, nice.
So something else that I did while I was out here, which I've always wanted to do. So I took a shot, and I brought my expenses down. I remember, not to be so open with you guys, but I remembered when I first lived in Los Angeles and I had a wife and 2 kids and a nanny and a big home and 2 cars and an office. My nut was about 12 to 14 grand a month. Okay?
Wow.
Easy. And now my nut's 3,000 to 4,000 a month. I could easily live off 3,000 to 4,000 a month.
Yeah, that's pretty manageable.
I know, but not to say that I do that, but what I'm saying is that I've kept my life so simple now that I can just concentrate on the things that I need to do to be successful. Yeah. So I spend all my waking hours doing that, or working out and staying healthy, and doing what my kids need from me when they need me, and that's it.
Now, you played amateur baseball for a while, and then you wound up on top as world champion, amateur baseball, and a number of times, I might add, and now you're in the Hall of Fame. Do you think?
So this is my Superbird. This is my Superbird producer. So let's see what he has to say.
Nice.
Right.
It's ruined.
Hey, so I'm just talking about the Superbird project. Do you have any news, or are we just planning on our meeting together?
I do have some news, yes. But yes, would love to get together, and I'm pretty much available all week.
So what is the news on Superbird?
The news on Superbird is Mary Viola at Wonderland, which is McGee's company, passed on the project. She spoke to McGee about it, and their take was it's already been made with Ferrari versus Ferrari, and B, they didn't have any luck with their past NASCAR motorsports project with Britney Spears attached, so they didn't feel that they could get any traction with it.
Yep. Well, things happen. So move on to the next people.
Of course.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye.
Rick, I'm really surprised the NASCAR project with Britney Spears wasn't funded.
Hey, I mean,
Didn't do well.
But this is my life every day in Hollywood, and I figured I'd let you guys listen in on a real phone call.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, we had the script at McGee and his company.
Right.
Big director, A-list director, and they passed, and they gave, what were the 2 reasons they gave? They said it's been done, Ford versus Ferrari, which it really hasn't.
Right. That was bullshit.
We're a different story. And the Britney Spears movie didn't do well, that they try to get done 15 years.
Which means they're a fucking moron.
if it doesn't work with Britney Spears, it'll never work. Said someone dumb.
Well, you know what? Look, there you go. But we move on. I mean, we get rejections all the time.
Rick, I think that rejection with those excuses, you should move on. Even if they had said yes, you just said, you know what, we're going to actually just option you guys.
I say you double down.
Those are the wrong people to work with if those are their excuses.
So we also have the scripts with Vince Vaughn, who I happen to actually have a relationship with, because he and his mom and I are really good friends.
Right.
And I was developing a show around his mom, and his mom and I became good friends. And his mom had read the script and said, this one part would be great for Vince. And we got it to Vince, and Vince has had the script for 3 months and hasn't read it yet.
Yeah, well, you know how those movie stars are. They never actually want to work.
He's promised to read it, and he's promised to read it. Look, this McGee thing, I mean, it's weird that he called right when I was on with you guys, because we've been waiting for that answer for about a month now. So
Wow. Hey.
Yeah.
We're glad to move things along.
Yeah, felt fast.
McGee's not going to direct our movie. So, oh well.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. If you got a good script, it's not a big deal who finally winds up attaching to it and getting it done, right? I mean, and I think it's stupid to say that, we've already, it's already been done with Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, how many copycat movies have come out that have been just as successful or almost as successful as their predecessor? I mean, you name any major...
Yeah, if you read our script, it's I don't want to say completely different. There are elements of it that are similar.
But it's a true story. I mean, here's the thing. It's not
it's
like
not Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yeah, it's not a copycat of a total fiction piece, right? It's a real story with true, individuals who actually had to live that life and live that reality and figure out what the next step was past Ford taking over the racing world to build the next car and the battle of the brands, so to speak. This was a big story. I mean, I read about it in a few articles online, and I know the story basically because I love cars and car culture, and I owned a '69 Firebird convertible, as part of my life history. I know muscle cars, and I know that story and the design and the reason that Plymouth built that car and how well they did and how much they dominated. I mean, that's not just a follow-up fiction piece that's trying to be a Me Too. It's a real-life story that needs to be told because it's an amazing fucking story.
And as the only racing fan that can read, you had a responsibility to...
Right. There's that.
And the car was banned too, by the way. After it won in 1971, it was banned.
Yeah, they couldn't race it anymore.
And then you never saw a winged car again. So
right.
That's the other part about it. But look, that was a very timely, interesting phone call with the discussion that we're having.
Yeah, it was amazing.
See, this is the disappointment that I go through every day, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be one euphoric moment somewhere down the line because someone's going to make this movie.
Yeah.
And it's going to be with the right person who loves it and wants to do it. McGee is the right person. So,
Yeah. So back to my question. Then
Sure.
Your phone call interrupted. My question right there was going to be, you played baseball amateur forever, and you won a championship. And I know that didn't take, that took a lot of effort. It took a lot of stamina. It took a lot of heart. Do you think you're ready for that same type of championship in filmmaking? Do you think you're ready for that it's the big break is coming? Do you feel it?
Well, I didn't get into the baseball just to win championships. I really love the sport. And I could compare that to the same thing with screenwriting and filmmaking, is that I didn't get into it just so I could, hit home runs and win awards. I want to make good movies, of course. But with this particular project, I think I have two projects that I really believe in that can take me far. One of them is this Superbird, and the other one is Maslin, which is my beginnings of professional football project, which is really a neat project. And I don't want to get too deep at all into that because I could talk about that one for hours. But I think that I had to make the move out here if I wanted to live that dream anymore. I don't think I would have fulfilled that dream in Georgia. I think I needed to, even if I go back to Georgia at some point, which, there's always a possibility I go back to Atlanta. I still had to come back out here again and get my feet wet because the business is so different from when I lived out here before.
So let me ask you this question in closing because we're running out of our time here. I know that your life hasn't been all roses. And I know that you've had a lot of struggle to get where you are and to have the success that you've had. But I also know you as a perpetually happy guy and always optimistic and always a smile on your face and always joking around. How do you what's your mindset? What's your secret? How do you do that? And what advice would you give to those who might be hanging on a little tight?
I'm a resilient MFer, and I always live my life thinking, you get up, it's another day. You got another chance. You got another chance to win. I said this in another documentary that I made. Most people live their life not wanting to lose, right? So they do everything to not lose.
Right.
They do everything to not go bankrupt. They do everything to not, get divorced. They do everything to not, fail at some athletic endeavor.
Right.
I do everything to win. And if I don't win, it's okay. I'm okay with losing, but I do things to win. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, God, it's another day I can win, right? And that's how I go about it. Meditation and yoga has really helped center me. I've been doing it for 9 years now, and I've upped my practice to yogi status, so to speak. I got my certification in yoga as a teacher. I actually, the other day, I spent an hour meditating without moving. And that's, if you know me, that's almost an impossibility. So, I had to do it for a class, where we had to just literally look at this burning candle for 1 hour. It was incredible. And that's my secret. My secret is that you always have another chance. I get depression and I don't get it. 'Cause like I've had 3 people in the last 4 years that I know personally commit suicide. 2 guys I played college football with who were great guys, family guys, and for whatever reason, something was going on in their life and they couldn't take it anymore and they ended their life. And I'm always in the belief that something great is around the corner. And if I wasn't here, I'd miss it, right? So I don't want to miss the party, and it may be an Oscar nomination in 3 years from now, but I don't let McG ruin my life, I don't let someone tell me that my script's not good enough or my film's not good enough. They could say whatever they want to me, and they might even be right, but I'm not going to let them bring me down. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to learn how to be resilient. And a lot of people, they cave in, they just quit, they break down, they can't take negativity, they can't take someone criticizing them. There's a great thing in yoga. It's called suffering can be anticipated and avoided. So I'm going to leave you with that to think about that. Suffering can be anticipated and avoided. And that's a great motto to describe how I live my life. And you're going to have hardships, and it's how you handle those hardships and how you avoid getting the worst of them that make you successful.
Wow. Well said, sir. I think the guys on the couch agree with everything you've said.
Oh, yeah.
In the last couple of minutes to sum it up. Well, thank you for spending the time with us, man. I just wanted to give everybody that screenshot of, middle America and struggling to survive and being happy regardless of the ups and downs that occur, because that's what everybody's life is. I mean, there are very few people who are at the top, like the Brad Pitts or the Jennifer Anistons or the whatever, who are, always connected with the project that's doing amazing, or that, Steven Spielberg or whatever.
Adam Sandler.
Yeah. We hope the best for you and your movies, and please let us know what's going on and all the stuff that you need in Atlanta. Ben's got a little tertiary connection with the production scene here in Atlanta, and he's, of course, a Navy SEAL sniper medic, so he can provide security and medical assistance on your set.
Shoot you, then fix you.
I'm also a Motorola vendor.
Yeah, so he can hook you up. He's got the hookups, and we'll forward his information over to you so you can give him a call when you're ready to get on the plane.
I'll be in Georgia December 20th.
Awesome.
Well, maybe we have to come down and have drinks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
I'll
sure.
be there for like 7-8 days, something like that. So
Nice. Let's link up, and we'll, make some introductions, because
yeah, come on in.
Hey, you guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon so you can get our awesome content that comes out every week, and the clips come out every day. Love you. Talk to you soon. Peace.